Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Today is August 10th, 2021. I'm Matt Van Valkenburg, a council member of the Royal Asiatic Society, Korea. On behalf of the officers and council, I welcome you to our lecture. By way of reminder, lecture content does not necessarily reflect the opinions or positions of Royal Asiatic Society, Korea. The Royal Asiatic Society traces its beginnings to India in the late 1700s and was formally chartered in London in 1824 by King George IV. The Royal Asiatic Society of Great Britain and Ireland granted a charter to the Korea branch in 1900, the fourth year of the Gwangmu Emperor of Korea. RAS Korea expresses sincere thanks to our generous sponsor, Asia Development Foundation, for their continuing support. We especially thank our members who have paid their annual dues. Your dues provide essential primary funding for RAS Korea. Without your membership, we would not be able to host the lecture series. We would love to have you join us. It only takes a few minutes to sign up. Membership gives you the opportunity to support the world's first and oldest Korean studies organization. For 121 years, we have strived to explore and promote all facets of Korea's rich heritage. Members receive our annual journal Transactions. Members of RAS Korea are also recognized reciprocally by most of Asia's RAS-affiliated societies, as well as the London-based original RAS. See our website at RASKB for details. A link is posted in the chat box. If you are not a member, we request a one-time admission fee. Please refer to the donation page on your screen for PayPal and bank transfer information. This information will also be posted in the chat box. We are joined tonight by Ryan Berkabile. When he is not taking photos of abandoned neighborhoods, Ryan likes to write up his explorations for his website, Long Distance Runner. He is also a frequent contributor to Gwangju News, an international magazine covering Gwangju and South Jeolla Province. Ryan also self-publishes a photography zine titled The Bulldozed Future. After the lecture, there will be time for questions. Would you please welcome Ryan Berkebile?
Hi, everybody. Okay, so I want to say thanks to Royal Asiatic Society for this amazing opportunity to be able to share my I don't want to say it's just a hobby, but in the most simplest terms, this is what I do in my free time. Actually, I'm going to talk more about this later, but yes, this is my presentation. It's about urban exploring in Korea. It's called the Bulldozed Future. It's based on a zine that I put out, a photography zine that I put out about my documentation of urban redevelopment. It's a lot of it is in urban areas, but I mean, it also can take place in rural settings as well. Lots of abandonments there, but I guess the first thing I should just talk about is like this picture right here. It's a very dramatic landscape. Usually when you're walking around Seoul, maybe you're not gonna notice this too much because they have tarps up around as a way of blocking it off, saying, oh, nothing to see here, you know, just out of sight, out of mind thinking. But, and when I first came to Korea, I mean, I never really thought about what were behind these curtains. In fact, I really didn't pay attention to my the surroundings too much. I was just more about getting from point A to point B, like going to this destination, starting from one destination to getting to another destination. But through the hobby, I don't want to call it a hobby, but it is a hobby. Through urban exploration, I've been able to like appreciate my surroundings more. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm also going to talk about some of my explorations. And if I have time, I will show you some of the photos that I've taken in rural settings, but most of the stuff I'm going to talk about is from urban redevelopment zones in Korean, Berkebile. So why don't I just start? I'll introduce myself. I came to Korea in 2005. I'm an English teacher. I'm still an English teacher. And I have been urban exploring since about 2014. In between that time, I used to go to punk shows in Hongdae, at Skunk Hell, at all these old clubs that are no longer around anymore. I've also practiced Buddhism. I go to retreats whenever it's possible. So in between this time of first coming to Korea, I've had interests, and so I've been able to, I think since I became an urban explorer, I've been able to shape and develop all these point of views through my interests. And another interest of mine would be film photography. I really like shooting on old analog film cameras. There's something aesthetically pleasing, more beautiful about shooting something grainy. And there's something to be said about the weight of having to get your film back, and the process of getting that back. And it's not instant gratification like having a digital camera. That being said, I do shoot on an iPhone, and I will use iPhone photos for, if it's very important, like I'll use iPhone photos for my blog and stuff. But for the zine, the Bulldozed Future, it's all film, all analog. I guess I should also mention this picture. This is a picture of me when I was 6 years old. I grew up in the 80s, and my grandma would say, do you want to go? Like, she would babysit me, and then we would go on these adventures. And some of these places were abandoned buildings and stuff. I've talked to other people and like who grew up around the same time as I have, and had similar interests of just exploring, being curious about what an abandoned building, what were the reasons why something was like this, in this condition? Why was it left like this? But back then, I don't think there was a term called urban exploration. It was just exploring or going on an adventure. So I've always had this curiosity for exploring abandonments, but I didn't really reconnect with it until 2014.
Yeah.
So I do the zine. I also have written about my adventures in Gwangju News. I'm going to talk about some of the adventures that I've been on, that I've written for Gwangju News. But one thing that I didn't include in this talk was I lived in Japan for a short bit, and one of the most interesting explorations I went and visited was an abandoned North Korean school in Gifu Prefecture in outside of Nagoya, and some of the things that you find, like old Juche literature, all it's really fascinating stuff. So I really wanted to include it here, but there's just not enough time, and I don't want to keep you here all night long. So I've written about that for Gwangju News, and I also write about it on my website, which is longdistancerunner.org. And you can go there, and I try to, it's definitely always a work in progress, but I'm trying to do, I realized through creating this blog was how to document urban development from beginning to its end. Like I'm now that I have a sort of a process for it, I know that I shouldn't just dump all my photos onto on a one single blog post, but I should do a gradual step-by-step post about like the process involved with redevelopments, and which I'm going to talk about very soon. So yeah, I'm going to further talk about my process very soon. And I should also mention that I'm a member of the Royal Asiatic Society. I appreciate everything it does, the literature, the lectures. I just wish that we could one day have lectures again face-to-face. One of the greatest things after going to a lecture is meeting up afterwards in the social aspect. So hopefully one of these days we will be able to have that again. All right, so I'll continue on. Oh, here's a little plug, a little ad that I made for my zine. I have 2 issues out, and you can, if you're interested, you can purchase them from me personally, or you can get a physical copy through me. But at this moment, because the postal system is kind of screwed up, I'm only sending physical copies to people who living in Korea, but there are PDF copies which you can obtain as well. And by the end of this month, I should have issue 3 out. And I want to thank my wife for making the wonderful logo. It's an amazing logo, and thank you, Sun-Yun, for your awesome graphic design skills. Okay, I'm going to start off with some quotes. The first quote is about skateboarding. Now, skateboarding, I don't know, maybe it doesn't jump out as an instinct, something that might instantaneously think about. But what I thought about when I saw this quote was, skateboarding is a way to redefine the way you look at the world. A skateboarder uses, when they're skating in an urban environment and not in a skate park, they see things in a different way. Like they see slabs of concrete in a different way someone who doesn't skate in. And I feel like being an urban explorer is very similar. You look at your surroundings in a different way than someone who is just going from point A to point B. But let me read this. This is from Ian MacKay. He's the founder of the independent record label Discord Records. He was a member of the punk bands Minor Threat and Fugazi. And what he says is, skateboarding is not a hobby, and it is not a sport. Skateboarding is a way, sorry, I gotta move you guys, is a way to redefine the world around you. So I think you could take out skateboarding and put urban exploration. And what he says is about skateboarding is not a hobby, I think really resonates with me. I mean, I, at the beginning of this, told you this is my hobby, but I think hobby is kind of a cheap way of seeing it. It implies something that you only do on your free time and you don't put much thought into. Like, and I don't want to offend anyone who's a stamp collector, but when I think hobby, I think stamp collecting or baseball card collecting. But when you're skateboarding or when you're urban exploring, I think you're interacting, it's a very active thing. You're interacting with the world. I don't want to say that stamp collectors or baseball card collectors don't do that, but you're interacting with your immediate surroundings. It's a very visceral thing. Skateboarding, and it's not a sport. Well, unfortunately, I think skateboarding has definitely become more of a sport because it's definitely more widely acceptable, but skateboarding, its roots are, it's always been out of, it's not a popular thing. It's not, it was always out of, what am I trying to say? The roots of skateboarding are filled with misfits and people who don't fit in. It's a activity of people who don't like sports do. So in a way it is an anti-sport, but it has its roots in subculture and punk, in underground culture. So it's not a sport, but you can't really tell when you see people winning gold medals from the Tokyo Olympics. So, but it's good to see that skateboarding is becoming more acceptable, because back in the 80s, if you were a skateboarder, you would be thrown in jail. I mean, there's those stickers that say skateboarding is not a crime, even though cops would arrest people really easily for this kind of stuff. And so, as I said, skateboarding is a way to redefine the world around you. Urban exploring is the same way. This other long quote is a book that is this book right here. This is a really old book from 1969. It was printed by the Royal Asiatic Society. It's called Seoul, Past and Present, by Alan D. Clark and Donald N. Clark. And as I was reading this, this is something from the preface that really stuck out to me. One of the most difficult problems which we encountered when writing about Seoul whoops. Oh. Whoa. Writing about Seoul. I'm just going to read it from the book. Okay. Okay, one of the most difficult problems which we encountered while writing about Seoul is the rate at which things are changing. In the time it has taken to prepare this book, for example, the city's population has doubled and changes have taken place accordingly. But it was here yesterday is a common cry of incredulous Seoul residents who find their favorite places moved suddenly. They may say it is of vendor stalls, alleys, handicraft shops, or public offices. The only thing you can depend on is that Seoul will change. And while we have tried to keep the manuscript up to date, there is no doubt that before the ink is dry on the pages of the book events, we'll have the ink is dry on the pages of the book, events will have altered some of the places we have described. And then I included just the old Royal Asiatic Society address because I don't know. Can anyone tell me if that's the current post office box for the Royal Asiatic Society? So when they were writing this, the preface was written in 1969. The authors, they grew up in Seoul in the early 20th century, around right around the colonial era, the beginning of the colonial era. So they were seeing their city of Seoul change even then. And when I read this, I was like, this is still happening, like constantly. Seoul is being changed, altered in many different ways. And that's one of the reasons why I named my zine The Bulldozed Future, is because it seems like it's always going to happen. Something is always going to be changed. And I mean, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. I'm not here to make judgments. I'm just saying that things are always being altered. So as I mentioned, this was written in 1969, and a fun side note is I I recently got some slides from my parents my grandparents came to Seoul around this time in 1969. They were part of the Lions. They were going to go to a Lions International Convention in Tokyo. So they signed up to do this this tour of Asia, not just Korea. They were only in Seoul for about 3 days, but these are a couple of the pictures that stuck out for me. Like, here's this redevelopment that I just mentioned in the quote earlier. I believe the hotel, the brown hotel right there, that is the Bondo Hotel, I believe. I don't even know what was here, but I'm sure some of you guys who are a lot savvier might recognize some of these things and be able to name them. So here's some old style workers, doing it the old fashioned way. So I just wanted to include that. So, yep, Seoul in 1969. Now I will give a short, brief primer on what is urban exploration. Urban exploration is such a vague term. It's more of like for me, a placeholder term. I don't know anybody who does this hobby that really says, yeah, I'm an urban explorer. I think we kind of use it very loosely and very, yeah, it's just not a very accurate term, but people use it, and I might as well use it to just to tell you what this is. So urban exploration is a subculture, also known as urbex, and is the investigation and wandering of man-made, human-made structures, whether above or below the ground. People use not just urbex, there's so many different terms, but I'm just gonna keep it as simple as that. I mean, everybody has their own idea of what it is. I mean, you could just say walking around the neighborhood and just being more aware of your surroundings could be urban exploration. It's such a loose term, but then there's a very dedicated subculture of people who will tell you, who will police you and tell you, this is urbex, this is not urbex. It sounds a lot like punk rock in the 80s, actually. Like, this is punk rock, this is not punk rock. What you're doing is punk rock, what you're not doing. So, but honestly, I'm not a very judgmental type. People can just take pictures of their surroundings and not have to go into abandonments or climb rooftops or cranes. It's what you make of it. So I'll just mention that it's a mixture of adventure, tourism, and I put in parentheses eco and dark tourism, because I feel like depending on what, there is a certain dark component to this. I feel like, I mean, it's not pretty, especially when you see an entire neighborhood just demolished. I mean, and the stories that you hear of and the politics involved in evicting neighbors and the methods in getting neighbors to get out it's pretty sad. And so I think there's always going to be a dark component, a dark tourist aspect to it. Why did I write eco? Eco is just being more mindful of your environment and not just taking pictures and not trying to cause a scene. You're just there and you're a visitor. Treat it with kindness, treat it with respect. Don't try to make make it even worse. Anthropology, there's a study of just culture involved in what makes a society what they are, like why they go about, why does Korea always seem to be changing at a rapid pace? There's many anthropological ways of looking at it, of Korean culture after it got opened up in the late 19th century. I'll also mention that when you go through a redevelopment zone, it can also be a form of archeology. You're digging through the modern past. You can find clues of people and their lives, and that is another aspect that makes it really sad and really interesting at the same time. So it's another form of digging up the past. So I'm mostly going to be talking about abandonments and redevelopment zones. That's the thing that I'm mostly interested in. But I mean, that doesn't stop me from going on top of rooftops. I'm going to tell you right now, I've never climbed a crane or an antenna or a smokestack. But if you go onto YouTube, you can find lots of people with 80,000 followers or Instagram who do these things, and they're sponsored by people and get paid to do these things. None of this really interests me that much. Plus, I am really, really scared. I'm not overly scared of heights, but I just don't want to put myself in that position. But I will admit that it does offer some cool imagery, outlook, a cool panoramic scene around you. I've had a couple friends visit catacombs. In fact, like one friend visited the catacombs in Paris, and another one visited the ones in Odessa, and those look really intense. You really don't want to go there as a beginner. You want to go with a guide, because there are people who've gotten lost in those places. Tunnels, sewers, storm drains, those can all be dangerous, but also really fun. In fact, it wasn't until urban exploring that I realized that Seoul is just, and other cities in Korea as well, they have just paved over streams, and there are numerous underground streams connecting around Seoul. And if you go into a tunnel, you might find some of these underground tunnels, or these underground streams, which is really fascinating. Most of the locations that I will talk about today are urban, but there are a lot of things that are rural. I mean, when I talk about urban exploring in Korea, it's a two-sided coin. One side could just be urban exploration, urban redevelopment. The other can be abandonments in rural areas, and what are the reasons why there are so many abandonments in rural locations. I mean, one thing to think about is the population density. A lot of people want to live in urban settings, so there's going to be people leaving their hometowns. There's also the low birth rate. Thinking about like Korea's low birth rate, there are a lot of schools that once were thriving, healthy schools, but now that the population is decreasing and people are living in urban areas, there's a lot of closed down schools. And then I wrote the Hanja characters, for which in Japan are called Haikyo. And Haikyo there is a bigger, more developed scene in Japan. there's a lot more people who are of local origin that participate in this scene in Japan. And I would say that the people who participate in this scene in Korea are mostly foreigners, and there's many theories. I mean, perhaps I will get into it later, but the majority of people who do this are foreigners, and foreigners that, I don't know, depending on your situation, are not here for very long. They're here for a couple of years and they go back home. But I mean, a few of us have been living here for a long time, and we are exceptions to the rule. And then I wrote these down because I don't know if urban exploration is the best. I don't know how you would call it in Korean, but these are just some suggestions. John Dunbar suggested to just phoneticize urban exploration into Hangul. I mean, but I don't know. There's no right answer. Everybody has their own ideas of what it is. So be it. Okay, I'm going to continue now. And now I thought I'd go into the process of redeveloping the neighborhood. This is based on my observations over the years. Every neighborhood, every redevelopment that I've been in is a little bit different. But generally, these are all general observations that I've seen in my time in going into a J.K. Ball urban redevelopment area in Seoul, or even in Gwangju, or whatever city I've been in. But a lot of the explorations I've done were in Gwangju or in Seoul. Usually, well, this is where we can talk about the eviction process, but workers, hired goons, if you will, people are hired to intimidate residents to leave, and they do it in numerous ways. They spray paint the walls with threatening graffiti. They stack garbage all over the place just to make it unlivable. Whatever their means are to just get the people to take whatever lowball offer they get from the company redeveloping or the government or whatever, and get them out of there. So, I mean, I have seen threatening graffiti, but a lot of the graffiti that I do see is where you see gonga, empty house, or chulgo, which is removal. Just workers designating, oh, this is going to be removed, this is an empty house, or spray painting, the gas has been turned off, or water, electricity has been turned off. So these usually, I would say 1A and 1B, like these happen around at the same time. Usually once they get people out and all the garbage out and they move all the garbage, then workers will go in and they'll take out all the metal that's in the, like they'll take off the doors. Oh, I should also mention that around this time, they also, in the early stages, they just start smashing windows. So when you're walking around, if you're ever curious about walking around in this area, don't wear flip-flops, don't wear any light shoes, wear sturdy shoes, because it's almost guaranteed that you're going to be walking around glass shards. So they just go around and kind of recklessly just kind of break out windows and stuff. So they're breaking out windows. Then they start to take out the metal, the coils from the ondol, all the metal, whatever it is. They just all start to gather that stuff around. once they pretty much get all of that stuff out, then and this is, I'm just condensing everything. Like some neighborhoods go really quickly, others go for a prolonged period. Like there's also cases where churches or other people refuse to leave, and so they're going to protest and just stay as long as they can. So sometimes the redevelopment process goes on for a prolonged period. Sometimes it goes quick. That's why I try to go back fairly often, just to keep just documenting it all the way through from beginning to the end. So once they get everything out, they pretty much start to demolish the buildings. And one way they do that, they don't use, like in some places in America, you see people using TNT, companies, construction workers to use TNT to implode buildings, but none of that happens here. Yeah, it's all done with excavators. And I got a picture right here. Here is, oh, I forgot one of the most important things, the tarps. The tarps are put up usually after, I don't know, the garbage taken out, everything's clean. So this is one of the ways you kind of, a method of distracting people from making people look the other way. Oh, there's nothing going on here. There's just some big tarps up. Or later on, when they are through the entire process of demolishing and everything's been leveled out, they'll put up these big white tall fences, and they usually have really bad graphic design of people photoshopped in there, and really colorful, inspiring quotes and stuff like that. So it's a way of just like people just keeping gawkers away, or just making it not such a sight. Because yeah, if you look at this, these are pretty powerful images. You don't really want, I don't think people, the workers or the companies who are putting these projects together really want gawkers looking at these scenes. And I'm sure there are people who don't want to look at these scenes either. It's a pretty depressing sight, actually. So yeah, tarps are up. They start demolishing. Usually they start to work on it with the claw, and workers usually, or two workers, are using water to spray it down and to make it weaker so it's easier to knock down. Yeah, so after all of this, in the bottom right hand corner, I'm sorry, this is like kind of like the end of well, it's not the end, but it's like what I consider the end of my documentation process. I mean, I'm not really interested in documenting the building of new apartments. I'm more interested in seeing from when people have left to when it's all gone. It's a really jarring scene, and I'm going to show you some more pictures right here. This is Bongo Maul. This is an old moon village, also known as Daldongne. This is from 2017. This is just showing you a process in a wider perspective. You can see most of the buildings here have their windows taken out. There are some in the background that still have windows, so it's quite possible that these buildings still had people living in them, or they were being used as headquarters for the workers. Yeah, this is just a wider angle of the entire process right there. Now I'll talk about, I'm going to talk about a bunch of neighborhoods, but I'll start with this one. This one's Imundong in Seoul. This is from, I took this on the rooftop of a Won Buddhism building on March 29th, 2020. On the right-hand side is, what station is it? It's Wayday Station, Hanguk University of Foreign Studies Station. So this is it on March 29th, 2020. It looks like it's still a vital neighborhood, but no, I was walking around here since early March around this time. These were pretty much all abandoned. So now let me show you what it looks like 2 months, almost 2 months later. There it is 2 months later. That is quite a progress in 2 months. And let me also tell you that the redevelopment also goes beyond these tall KCC buildings on the left-hand side. It also goes in, from on the other side of the road, and it goes behind K-Arts. Can't think of the name of the university, right? K-Arts, let's just call it K-Arts because everything is K, and we'll call this K exploration. So yeah, that's quite a drastic change right there in 2 months right there. And this is like one of the bigger developments that I've actually wandered around. That is quite, I mean, there's still some work there on the left-hand side that hadn't been done, but that's quite progress. That is really, that's Bali right there. Okay, and then here it is on May 2nd of this year. So here's quite a progress right there. And I saw some pictures of the area recently, and it's pretty much the same. It's just that there's a lot more vegetation. So I'm not sure when they're gonna start doing anything with this, but yeah, it's fun to, well, it's not fun, but it's fascinating to just see the entire process all the way through. Okay, let me tell you why I enjoyed in exploring this neighborhood so much. Part of why I enjoyed it was like the features of some of these houses. Like I loved some of the tile work. There's just something so beautiful and charming about the tile work of these houses. And by talking to people who are very knowledgeable about architecture, Korean architecture, they were able to tell me like some of these houses date back from the 50s. And I really enjoy the one on the top right, there's the Hanja character for luck, Bok. There was another house that had another Hanja character in the tiles, which was for double happiness. It was placed in a really awkward situation, and it was really hard to photograph, but it was these little things that this is one of the reasons why I get so much enjoyment from exploring these places, is finding little details about architectural details and just gaining a deeper appreciation of who lived here and the time period of when this was a thriving neighborhood. Down below we have City Hanukk. There are a lot of beautiful hanoks of this style around this neighborhood, which is one of the highlights that I enjoyed of this place. So here are the externals, and here are some internals, or the insides. Like, I really love this, I don't know what the name of this room was, but this is like not sure, but I enjoyed this room. Everything about it was just so aesthetically pleasing. The mirror, I can't think of the name of it right now, but the heater, the radiator, there we go. And then we got the little courtyard for the hanok. And then again, little details. This was in the kitchen of like the post of the kitchen, the little tile mosaic work. I really appreciated that stuff. So now I will show you one of my most interesting discoveries in this neighborhood. This happened in the other side of the neighborhood. So when I was showing you the process of the demolition, those were really more modern and well take care of houses. But when you go over to the other side, it would told another story. There was a lot more rundown houses and it was a lot more older and grittier. And one of the places I found was an abandoned Buddhist temple with all the stuff still in it, all the Buddhas still in it, all the stuff you would find in a functioning Buddhist temple. So let's take a look at some of the external pictures. From the outside, it kind of just doesn't look like a Buddhist temple. If you are familiar with Buddhist temples in Korea, they're very colorful. They're very big. They're yeah, you can't miss them. But this place is very simple. This is looks like a house. I mean, I don't know the story behind who owned this place or what its deal with. I mean, sometimes when you go into an abandoned place, you can find, and I'll show you later on, lots of documentation about people who lived here or worked here, and you build a story of, albeit an incomplete story, about the past residents or occupants. And there wasn't much here besides the Buddhist stuff. And in the Hanja on the left, in the building, the main building, that says Daeungjun, that is the Great Buddha Hall. So this was just a small temple. And when I saw this, the lower right-hand picture, that's how I saw it before I went in, because I was not sure what the situation was. Because when you see shoes out in the front, you're very thinking, does someone still live here? But then when you look on the top of the building where the shoes are, you see it caved in. So I was getting these mixed messages and I was like, is someone still taking care of this place? At least that one, the building on the lower, the one straight ahead on the lower right, it seems like nobody was taking care of that. But you never know when you see shoes out there. But when I actually worked up the nerve to open it, it was this dusty time capsule. There was no, another thing you might, if you ever do urban exploring in Korea and you explore a neighborhood, you might find someone squatting in a place. That's another thing you might come across. So it's a thing you got to think about. And I was really thinking about it. I was really nerve-wracked trying to work up the nerve to actually open the door of the Daeungjun and take a look inside. And when I finally did, there was nobody in there. So now if there was someone in there, I would say just close the, or if there was evidence of someone actually squatting there, I would just close the door and leave, because out of just respect of someone's privacy, I would just leave it be. It's just the right thing to do. But when I walked inside, I saw this sanshin. So if you're familiar with Korean Buddhism or Korean folk religion like shamanism, the sanshin, mountain worship, is very, very strong tradition in Korea. So Buddhist temples, shamans, they worship the sanshin. And there's always going to be sanshin tenghwa. And when I saw this is like further evidence that nobody's been in here in a long time, because there's clearly water damage to the sanshin here. And besides the dust, the overwhelmingly dusty room, it was clear nobody had been in here for a really long time. Another reason why to wear a face mask, I tried, even before pandemic times, I would try to wear KF94 masks when going into a building because of the dust and the mold and all that stuff. So it's another thing thinking about if you ever are curious about this. And then I added this picture of a dusty Doksan. Doksan is the lonely saint. Doksan is another, I guess it has its roots in Chinese Buddhism, but it also goes back to China or India. And he was a saint that got, an arhat that got banished to earth by the Buddha. And the Buddha said that you must go spend the rest of your countless kalpas all the way, whatever amount of kalpas, which is the equivalent to 10 million years. You must spend all these kalpas down on earth to help people in samsara or whatever. So I just thought this is a great picture because he's a lonely saint in a very neglected building. And right behind him is a Tanghua of himself as well. Here is on the right side, there's a moktak. It's the wooden fish that monks use to lead chants. Right next to that is the wooden bamboo. It's called a chukpi, which is used to start the beginning and ending of meditation sessions. Now I'm going to move on to Hakdong. Well, I guess, I don't know. I feel like I don't know what to say to wrap this up, but that seeing stuff like this made me curious. Like when I first got into urban exploring, made me more curious about Korean culture, made me want to find out more about this stuff. And in turn, I mean, I have been a practicing Buddhist for a long time, so I already knew some of this stuff, but it also helps when exploring. It gives me more context of what I'm looking at. Now I'll go on to Hakdong, and maybe some of you are aware, some of you might not be aware, but on June 9th, there was a building collapse that happened. Now, if you look in the middle, there's a building in the background. It's tall, it's got the long, big brown tarps in the back. That building collapsed on June 9th. It killed 9 people and injured 8 more. And I was here with my friend Isaiah, and we've been in this neighborhood many times. I've been visiting this neighborhood since 2018. Isaiah's probably been visiting there longer. But we happened to be here about 10 days before the collapse, and I just happened to take a picture of the building that collapsed. We just wanted to see how far they were. I mean, this brought out a lot of outrage when people found out about what happened here. But I mean, as an explorer myself and other people who explore, it's nothing new really, because stuff like this, it's just, Korea has a long history of sidestepping safety regulations. And again, I think Berkabile culture has something to do with it, just getting stuff done in order to, time is money, just get it done, whatever way. If you don't have the permit, borrow the permit from someone and get it done. So this building, it collapsed because, well, they must have, behind the building in this picture is a major intersection. They don't even cordon off like the bus stop that's in front of this area. One of the things that got, that a bus happened to be stopped picking up passengers when this building collapsed. It got crushed. So one thing that stands out is they didn't even section this area off when they were demolishing this building. Another thing I've noticed also is if it's like a taller building and you can't really reach it, they'll put a small excavator on the top of a building and start working its way down, which doesn't seem very safe. So this really tragic event, it brought out outrage. And I mean, there were people who were calling the district at the, like before this, saying they noticed some buildings, they weren't really in, they looked pretty precarious. They were about to collapse. So, but nothing came out of it. So another thing about urban exploring is the danger, the thing that you need to think about. Yeah, there's, if you go behind these curtains, you're gonna see things that, I think that's another reason why they put curtains up, is they just don't want people to see what they do. Like they're just like the whole thinking out of sight, out of mind. And I think it works because a lot of people don't complain. People started complaining about this after the effect, but hopefully this incident raises some awareness. But now I'm going to share some photos that there were some really interesting places that me and Isaiah got into during this, in this neighborhood. But I'll first start off with some pictures from around 2018. Even then, this place was showing signs that nobody was living here. People were, it was always already a rough area. I mean, me and Isaiah had found people squatting in this building. This picture right here, there were people squatting in this building right here. Also, another thing you find when you're exploring neighborhoods are stray cats. Another thing I would recommend if you do this is to bring cat food. The cats will appreciate it. Gonna continue on. So yeah, this gets pretty rough. And this is like 3 years before it finally got demolished. And here is a burnt out floral shop. Just, I think people are just sitting on the land waiting for the best time to sell, just waiting for the inevitable to happen. There were a lot of old hanoks around here. It was beautiful. Just some of the things that you would find, like an old pump. Some of the buildings were, like one thing I've noticed is if a house lays abandoned for a really long time, residents are going to start throwing, or I don't know, passerbys are just going to start throwing trash into the yard, and it becomes this really big garbage bin, like this place on the left-hand side. Here's Hakdong, a little glimpse of it. As you can see, some of the houses already were caving in. A lot of the places were already neglected and abandoned for years. I'd like to actually share some of the more interesting things. I mean, this can be a really depressing thing, but some of the more interesting things, like this elderly man's calligraphy academy. This place we'd walked by many times. We saw the calligraphy in the window, but it just never presented an opportunity to take a look inside. Then one day we got, and this is around 2020, we got to go inside, and wow, this is what I was talking about earlier about like when you find a place and you just find so much about a person's life. It's amazing. Like you find out so much, and this is the human aspect that I appreciate about this. I mean, I can see a lot of people not finding this hobby fun. Frankly, it can be overwhelming, but when you find glimpses into people's lives and what they did, it's really rewarding. And this is the man himself, Kim Yun-Hwan. There are lots of pictures of him and his amazing artwork. There are some bird feathers that they would use for doing calligraphy. I don't know much about calligraphy, but there is so much equipment and his work or his students' work that you could find. It was just had to take as many pictures as you could and enjoy it because it was going to be gone, and it is gone. And yeah, through the little door right there on the right side, that's like his little office right there, little meeting room where you'd have tea with, I don't know, friends. And that's where you found a lot of personal information about this guy. And he happened to also be a Lions member like my grandfather. So lots of kind of touching things you would find. Like you would find also family pictures, like just getting to know who he was as a, you would find really dry business information, but you would find really amazing pictures of his life. I don't know how much time I see. It's 9:40 right now, but I'm just gonna try to plow right through this. I have way too many slides. Just Matt, if you can let me know when I should wrap up, that would be great. And this, I just say, this is where we say goodbye to the calligraphy studio and we go on to Cho Do-hyung's photographic life. We found a house. The house itself, in my opinion, wasn't very remarkable, but we found a room full of photos spanning numerous generations of this man who seemed to be a professional photographer. And as you can see, wedding photos, family photos, the photo of the man with the camera, that is him himself. It's really fascinating to see stuff like this. And I want to take pictures of it because it needs to be seen with the world, because it's gone. It's just, someone threw it out. It's demolished. So might as well take pictures of it and share it with people like you or anybody who is interested with it. Here's some more personal photos of, looks like maybe when he was in the army. Here's a press photo, credential, photo artist. Another family photo of he had, looks like, of his mother, his wife, his children. Here, this is what seemed to be photos that he took. Like, these are photos he took, and I was like, this guy, I was amazed by how he was able to take pictures of people very naturally. I am not a person that is, in my opinion, a person that takes pictures of people. I'm afraid of getting close to people and upsetting people if I take their photos. So to be able to have that skill of just getting people in as relaxed and as natural as possible, I was amazed by his skill. Here are what I would guess are colonial era photos. So again, these are photos are gone, bit the dust. Sad, but I want to share with you guys. The next place is in Seoul, and this is a place that I nicknamed the Hidden Hanoks neighborhood because in this picture you can see in between this hanok are these more brick apartment Jutech buildings. I found this neighborhood to have lots of hanoks, but they happen to be hidden behind either, okay, they were hidden in two senses. They were either hidden behind these brick buildings, or they were hidden behind these modern facelifts. So, I mean, you can tell it's a hanok, but you can't really, it's been modernized over the years that, I mean, you can't really determine an age from far away, or how they're just modernized facelifts, cosmetic hanoks. So that's why they were hidden in two senses. That's why I gave it that name. It's again no longer here, but there are two hanoks that really greatly interest me. It was the one on the left is called the Tatami Hanukk. I called it that because when I went inside, I found tatami mats, and if anybody is not familiar, a tatami mat is like a straw mat that is from Japan that they use for their housing. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, could this be a house from the colonial era? And I mean, this was only the second house that I've seen with tatami mats. And after I shared this with Steve, Steve was who was here in the 70s. He told me that houses it was still pretty common to have tatami mats still in their houses. So it was at least still a thing up till the 70s and maybe the 80s. So I called it Tatami Hanukk that for its tatami. And then I will tell you why I called it Great Japan Hanukk the way it is, but I'll save that surprise for the next couple slides. So here's the inside. And what I was able to gather from my friends who are able to determine the age of these places, that this was registered by the government on June 30th, 1938. It's just amazing to see these houses. It's sad to see hanoks being demolished like this, but I also realized that the cost for preserving a hanok is also a lot of money too. So it's never an easy decision. There's always two sides to a story. I mean, my first reaction is, why destroy something so beautiful? But I know there's always, you got to take preservation. Is it worth preserving? If it's a building that's way past any ability to be preserved, then it might as well just go. So here next slide is, I'm gonna tell you why I named this the Great Japan Hanukk. Well, first let me tell you, the Great Japan Hanukk was registered on August 22nd, 1936. So another colonial era hanuk. There wasn't much inside that I could find. It had been remodeled, modernized. But the reason why I called it the Great Japan Hanukk was because finding the roof tile ends, which are called mangwa, I saw these mangwa that with the hanja it says Daeilbong, or Great Japan, with the crisscrossed Japanese flags, and I was like, wow, this is pretty remarkable and pretty shocking. In total, I think I found between like 5, 6, maybe 7 of them. I found them, and they were still hanging in many places. Again, when I found these things, this raised a really big question, and it's a question that I think there's no right answer, but can inspire a dialogue is, when is the right time to preserve something? I mean, when we talk about heritage, heritage is not just about the good things about a culture, it's also about the negative things that happen, hence the word inheritance. You inherit things from your family, and not all of it is great things to there. I mean, you might inherit a great outgoing personality, but you might also inherit things, negative aspects. So what I'm just throwing this out to you. If you want to, if you have any ideas, I would love to hear it. But when is the right time to salvage these negative cultural aspects? Because I know cultural, colonial era is a very depressing time, very sad time. But sometimes you need these kind of things to remember the past in order to not repeat them. So, I don't have any answers to that, but these were the two things that I found in this particular neighborhood that I found fascinating and wanted to share. Here's a view from, okay, the room. Yes.
You might need to stop.
Okay. Yeah, I prepared a lot of slides. So yeah, so I will probably stop right now and I'll just escape right there and stop sharing and say thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you stopped on a good topic with that question, and I mean okay, there's a lot of new stuff in the chat room, but would anyone like to ask questions? You could put your hand up, or I can try reading what's in the chat box. I mean, there was a question from Susie here asking, is the lecturer not taking things from those places, like the paintings or other things? There seem to be so many.
Well, I don't. I mean, there's a certain ethics involved with what it's like, as a tourist, you just take pictures and you don't leave your footprints, but you don't leave any kind of other harmful, you don't try to destroy the place, or you don't try to make a negative impact. But I understand that there's a side saying, well, it's just about to be demolished. I mean, my personal thing is you shouldn't take things, but I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule. Like in the case of those manhwa, I would say those would be a case where it would be worth to save, because those are something that are extremely rare and need to be saved. Generally, yeah, there are people, part of the process when you're going through these neighborhoods, or you're finding people who are collecting things that will resell them, and it's not a glamorous job, and they're not making a lot of money, but I don't want to take anything that will affect, like, I don't want to take anything that they could use for their job or for whatever money that they can get from it.
So there's a lively discussion in the chat.
Oh,
if people want to read that as well, there's other people's reactions and opinions on the ethics of taking things, not taking things, that people can read as well. Does anyone else have questions, you can use the raise hand function or oh, what's her? Can't hear you. No, there's no sound coming out. Okay. Still no sound.
I have a question.
Okay, yeah.
Ryan, thanks for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
The urbanization, I guess more recent, last, let's say 10 years, has been much larger in scope and much faster. And if Don was bewildered in '69, or
Yeah,
now it's without the T-map or the navigator,
yeah,
it can't seem to go any places these days. Huh?
right.
So I think the urbanization, the rate of change is going much faster these days. And so how do you try to keep up with that?
How do I try to keep up?
With your hobby of your urban studies?
Well, I use Google Maps and, well, not Google, sorry. Google Maps is terrible in Korea. I'm sorry, I use Naver Maps and I use Kakao Maps and Instagram hashtags to find places. That's how I find places, or if someone, word of mouth, good old fashioned word of mouth.
And then, to take some photos of some tall buildings or whatever some of the locations, you may have to resort to a drone.
I mean, there are people who do that. Yeah. I can see there are a lot of benefits to having a drone. I have never really been interested in using a drone, but never say never. I'm also worried that I would fly it in a no drone zone and get into lots of trouble. So that's another and I like being on the ground. I like the personally, I like ground level pictures. I mean, sometimes I like looking down upon, it's fun to get a wider angle, but personally I'm love staying on the ground.
So,
Thank you.
Oh, still can't hear you.
Maybe Kutzer, you can message me later and I'll talk to you about that. Still can't hear, no. Well, oh, Louisa, you have your hand up.
Yes, I have many questions, but I'll just pick one. Thank you, Ryan. That was so great and so wonderful to see more of your photos. And before I get to the question, I would really encourage everyone to grab a copy of Ryan's zine, Bulldozed Future. His photos are incredible and they need no words. You know, he really puts a lot of effort into choosing the photos that go together, and the story writes itself really. So they're really amazing. As a fellow urban explorer, Ryan, I kept hearing you go back to this idea of urban exploring at times being very jarring, depressing, and quite sad for, many reasons, in uncovering, rapid urban development, the loss of people's livelihoods, and, just the nostalgia of the past. And I've often had people ask me, why do I do it? And also, why does it upset me? But through all of this, Ryan, do you have one sort of key takeaway, from years of doing urban exploring in Korea? What is something that you think needs to change about the trajectory of modern society and culture in Korea?
Oh
Is
my
there
God.
anything that big question, but is there any
Yeah.
sort of one thing? I mean, just for me, I think
Yeah.
recently it's really been highlighted, the unsustainable pattern of human consumption and
Oh,
the
sure.
waste that's created in this. So for you, what do you think is sort of one thing going forward
Oh my God.
that this could inform? Well, yeah. Sorry, big question.
No,
but
it's okay. It's
came to
okay.
my mind.
It's okay. Thank you for the plug. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Well, Korea is hyper capitalist and hyper modernist, and there's just this mindset. It's changing your mindset, the paradigm, like, and it sounds so cliche, but it's true. You need to change your thinking. And there's a lot of old patterns of thought, like new is better, like this ingrained idea that we must present ourselves as the most perfect country and we're so modern. That is so deeply ingrained that it's something that's really hard to deprogram. I mean, this is something you'd have to work on numerous generations, like, because it's been going on for so long. But somehow be able to make an attitude, a shift in of what you value, your value shifts. I think that's the key thing, is a value shift, because if you shift your thinking, you're going to be able to not repeat your history over and over again. And it seems like there's so many patterns that are being repeated over and over again. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
John also asked, what is your favorite site that you've explored?
Oh, we were about to get to the pictures, but too late. Me and Isaiah went to an abandoned hospital in Gwangju, and cut to the chase. We found cancer jars, just left dusty cancer jars filled with lots of organs and tumors and stuff, and it's very disgusting. Perhaps you don't want to see that, so you're lucky. But if you're really curious, you can go to my website and look at some of the really interesting left behind tumors and organs. Yeah.
What would, Paul's question, what would the saddest site you've visited be?
Oh my God. Well, I feel like every site where there's a lot of family photos, those are really sad. I mean, it's interesting, but it's also sad because you get a picture of who used to live here and then they don't live there anymore. And you don't know why they left, but it could not be in the best terms. Yeah.
And why they left the wedding album behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. The wedding albums. I mean, that's another big question. Why do people leave their photos behind? I mean, part of me also thinks about, if you live in a place for a long time, you start to accumulate things. Like, my parents have been living in the same place for over 30 years. You accumulate stuff. Maybe you don't want to carry that stuff with you. I mean, there's no definitive answer, but seeing family photos left behind is really depressing.
So a question from Susie T. Lover. Don't you feel afraid of discovering those places? It feels like a thrill to enter, spooky feelings, maybe some bad spirits that you might take home with you on your visit. Sorry, this might be a bit of a shamanic.
No, that's awesome. Actually, I appreciate that. I mean, that's one thing I think about when I go into an abandoned shaman's house and you see bujok everywhere. Bujok being talisman. You find, like, you think about why do people what were the people trying to protect themselves from? I honestly I'm interested in shamanism. One reason I got interested in it is from finding bujuk in abandoned buildings. So I'm honestly, I love studying it, but I'm not a believer of it. I'm pretty even keel guy. I'm not overwhelmed by being like a ghost taking over my, following me home or whatever. So.
Okay, and Kurtza said, I'm the one Ryan mentioned who went to the Paris catacombs. I did not get to the tunnels with bones as there are only 5 entrances left, the others filled by the authorities, and there are over 300 kilometers of tunnels. I got apprehended by police before reaching those tunnels.
Yep, there we go. I remember Kutzer talking about that. Yeah.
Question from Paul Johnson. How would you feel about someone keeping the frame of the building but totally modernizing the inside?
Especially when you're talking about hanoks, you're just ruining, you're making it even worse, actually, in my opinion. You're just making it, it's very shallow, and it's not even structurally sound anymore because people who, I'm speaking to hanoks. When people refurbish a hanok, you're taking away key architectural elements that need to be there. And so you're taking away architectural integrity. You're taking away, I don't know, aesthetic integrity. I'd rather just see it all gone because it becomes a waste after a while.
Okay, here we'll have 2 more questions. There's John Jackson can go first.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
I just thought I would mention, I don't know if you are aware, but Busan NBC has a program called Forbidden Alleys.
Mm.
And it's also shown nationwide. They've been going around cities around the world, and they go and try to find an alley, of course, that's very interesting and most people would not know. And because of the COVID situation, they have been doing it in Korea. So they've done it in Seoul, Busan, Daejeon, Gwangju.
Mm.
And when they came to Jeju, I did it with them. And we visited a lot of alleys. Jeju has very unique alleys where there are stone walls.
Mm. Mm.
So it was more of a aesthetic type of experience for me. But if you have a chance to, they have a YouTube channel, and I don't know if they have the entire shows on there, but they have quite a bit on there of the different locations. If you went there and check that out, I'm sure it would be interesting to people all around Korea, because if you visited Busan, for example, or Jeju, they are trying to introduce some experiences that people would miss otherwise. And I don't know if I can do this, but if I can screen share, I'll share you a photo that might be interested. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Can you see the photo?
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yes, this is a photo in Mosopo. And this is in Mosopo. It was behind a coffee shop, and I go to Mosopo often.
Yeah.
But I had no idea this place was here, and we were up on the flat roof of a building next to the coffee shop, and we saw this smokestack. Of course, you know, what is that? And luckily, the owner of the coffee shop was interested in showing it to us. Of course, he would like to have his coffee shop have a little promo on national TV, but he let us go in, and he normally just keeps the gate locked, but it's an abandoned factory that the Japanese had there for catching and I guess packing and shipping abalone. And, you know, I'm sort of a photographer now, and it was a fantastic place to go in because there were so many geometric shapes and colors and fading colors and things that were, you know, returning to nature.
Yeah.
And I could have spent much more time than I did there. And also, you know, the not just realistic photos, but abstracts when you go and look at what's fading on the walls. You know, I've got photos that to me look fantastically, of course, I think that, but anyway, abstract and the colors there. And it's really a trip to visit places like that, particularly if you're a photographer.
Nice.
And not only for the historical aspect, but for the aesthetic experience and see what you can discover taking photos. So often you take photos and you go home and you do the post-processing and wow, you didn't see this. And suddenly it appears to you. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you about that program because if you're interested in urban exploring, it's something.
I'm just curious what alleyway they did in Gwangju.
I wasn't familiar with the program when they went in Gwangju, but they did it with, I can't remember the German man there that's been there for quite a while. He has a kind of coffee shop. I've forgotten his name. But they went to Penguin Village, of course. So they don't only go to places that are, you know, like this, that are you know, falling apart and dilapidating. And they also go to places that are interesting, but out of the way. So it's like a mix. And what they do in the program, which is really interesting. And if you go on YouTube, my program is on there. There were 2 nights and my program is on there totally. And I tell you this because I don't particularly want people to see it, because you always see people who are professionals going around and doing these kind of documentaries. And, you know, I'm not a professional, so I look rather unprofessional. But anyway, you can look at the rest in the photos. I got a lot of photos that I like, you know. My photography is better than my screen appearance, but it's on there. Forbidden Alleys and Jeju.
If you have a link, could you share it in the chat box?
Sure, I have the link, and I'll do that.
Because people were asking there, yes.
Yeah,
and
check it out, and a lot of cities that they went to. I don't know all of them, but I've been asked to do it again, and we're going to Kunsan at the end of this month. And I went to Kunsan 50 years ago by a raft with 4 oil drums floating down the.
I think I read about that.
Yeah, floating down the Kum River from Gwangju, and I haven't been back for 50 years, so it'll be an exciting trip for me. Anyway, I'll try to post that, and check out the Forbidden Alleys. It's quite an interesting show and quite professionally made.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure, thank you. I enjoyed your talk.
And Liddy, did you want to ask the question, or would you like me to read what you wrote in the chat box? Okay.
You can read it, thanks.
Okay. I would have questions about the urban renewal process itself. From the beginning, so from the belongings left behind, it seems that people are given very short notices. Am I right? And do inhabitants now organize to counter the renewal projects? Is there organized citizen contribution to the definition of the projects?
Okay. Oh, can you read that again one more time?
From the belongings left, it seems people are given a very short notice. Is that correct?
I don't know. I mean, it varies from place to place. I mean, some people, there are banners put up saying you need to be out by a certain time. It's a difficult question to answer. I'm just going from my experience that people usually, I don't know, I don't want to say that it's a very short amount of time, but I don't think I can really answer that question very well.
Yes, indeed, it would be more a question for urban planners, actually,
Yeah.
if there are any in the audience here, because in France they try to use any space available more and more, to use them for temporary occupation, for example, to help businesses, to help artists, to make cultural activities when there's a lack of that. And so I'm kind of surprised seeing such spaces, like the way they were left, and the fact that they seem to stay empty for a very long time, like finally not being redeveloped for seemingly quite a long time. And this is now that it's more and more used in France. I just wondered if there were such tools in South Korea, and also if the inhabitants, if the users of those spaces were also self-organized to counter those projects, because they seem to be led in quite a brutal manner from what you described in the beginning of the lecture. So this were the things I was wondering.
I mean, I've heard of places being repurposed. Like there is, like I went to a bunch of us who are here tonight have been to. It's now an art factory in Jeonju, but it was an old cassette factory, and that was repurposed into an art factory. I noticed that there are a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of, there are a growing amount of schools in the countryside that are being repurposed as campgrounds, and I'm sure there are other things that have been repurposed, but I can't really speak on that per se, really.
Okay, thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Oh, the oil drums in Seoul. Yeah, that's another thing that got turned into a public park. Yeah, the big oil drums.
The acoustics in there, mate, were amazing. I'm not sure if were you with us that day when we got all the instruments in.
No, I was not there.
Oh, shit, mate.
I was not there.
That was good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Ryan, for the lecture and answering the questions tonight. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruben.